The warnings from scientists about the impact of climate change are dire. By the end of the century, rising sea levels are expected to put a number of Pacific Island nations underwater. With more frequent and stronger hurricanes, more fires, and other natural disasters on the rise, millions of people are expected to be displaced, giving rise to a new kind of refugee. To learn more about the issues surrounding climate refugees, I'm joined now by Robert McEwen. He's a professor of geography and environmental studies at Wilfrid Laurier University, and he's in Kitchener this morning. Good morning to you, Professor.
Hi, Ben. I'm actually in my car in the middle of a winter storm in Kitchener.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope you're on the side of the road and you're safe. In January, the UN said people fleeing the effects of climate change should not be forced to return to their home countries. The ruling was based on someone who had applied for protection in New Zealand. What can you tell me about this case specifically?
Yes, so this is an individual whose family comes from a small island state called Kiribati, which is in the Pacific. And this is a very low-lying country. There's no land in that country that's more than a meter or two above sea level. The sea level is rising. The coasts are eroding very rapidly. And so his family was being deported. They had gone as visitors and didn't want to return home. The New Zealand government voted to or decided to deport them. And they took their case to the UN Human Rights Tribunal, who decided that in this particular circumstance, the family could go home. But in general, countries like Canada, New Zealand should avoid deporting people to places where climate change puts their lives at risk.
Well, we reached out to Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada to see how Ottawa is seeing claims from climate refugees. Now, this is what they told us, quote, in the case of people displaced due to a sudden onset weather event or a natural disaster, IRCC has in the past expedited applications already in the system and has also extended temporary resident visas for those already in Canada. All right, so that's for people who've had to deal with hurricanes, monsoons, tsunamis. But what does this mean for people claiming refugee status due to more gradual climate-related events?
Well, that case-by-case strategy has worked in the past, but the reality is that the climate is changing rapidly and that there are increasingly circumstances where people cannot go back to their communities after disasters or in the face of rising sea levels. We have a few communities here in Canada, like Tuktoyaktuk and Grise Fiord in the north, and some smaller ones near Halifax, where they're right at sea level, and this may be their future. But right now, in other parts of the world, there are a lot more such communities where people will need permanent solutions, and Canada might be a place that the international community looks for resettlement.
Lastly, Professor, and this is going to be something that people are going to be asking themselves for a while, what could this mean for other refugee claimants to Canada, people who are coming here because of war or persecution? Could we see the government having to choose between one bucket or the other?
I hope it doesn't come to that, but the reality is that there are millions of people around the world that are fleeing war and conflict who do need refugee protection, that we're going to have to make some tough choices. It's a very good question that you raise, and that if you look into the future, the World Bank projects that by mid-century, we could be looking at as many as 140 million people displaced in poorer countries because of climate change. That's not too far off. So there's some very hard policy decisions. I wouldn't want to be the policymakers who have to make these choices.
Robert McEwen, we thank you very much for your insight today. This is a conversation that will no doubt go on for a long time to come. Thanks so much.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.